I'll say a word about the title. I said moving beyond new tools and old rules. This is a slogan that I got from a friend who's a lawyer and professor here, Jan Hartsock, who says people say this all the time. Like, you don't need a new rule, right? You've got your rules. You got a new tool. Take your rules. I think she's thinking mostly in the area of law, and apply it to the new tool. No problem. Why are you guys all so nervous? And the answer is that doesn't actually work, right? A new tool does change the game. And this tool, AI, the new generation of AIs, I think we have to admit, and we have to engage with it with the benefit of our rules, of our ethical principles, but also with an opening and an openness, I should say, to modifying and learning and changing those rules. And actually, I think this is always the case in bioethics. Dr. Granis mentioned I run the Center for Bioethics, and when we think about new problems in bioethics, it's rarely or never like you just know what you have, like you know what your principles are, and you just carry it over and say, yes, it's good, or no, it's bad. Doesn't work that way. It's usually a conversation where the rules change as well as the tools. So let me go ahead and jump right in. So I'm a Regan Street member as well. I've got to mention that. It's not on my list of affiliations, but I am an affiliate scientist in the informatics program. So maybe the computer will be nicer to me now, knowing that I'm actually a member of the family. So Ray, I have no conflicts of interest to report, except 5 years ago, somebody told me to buy NVIDIA, and I didn't. So I will never forgive AI, just so you know. It's just that AI has made money for people, but not me. Next, please. Okay, so I need to thank a lot of people for talking to me about AI and ethics. These people all are very important to me, people I work with. I mentioned Professor Hartsock already as giving me the slogan for the title. Tom is a postdoc at the center. Nick and Clayton work at the center. Nick is our program manager. Everybody here knows Randy and Sean, who have taught me tons about AI. And again, this is my first chance to talk about ethics at an extended period in a meeting like this. So I'm really enjoyed putting this talk together and exploring the ethical issues. I hope that it's helpful to everybody. Continue. So Ray, I come to you from the Center for Bioethics. We focus on ethics for the future of health and medicine. It was founded in 2001. We consider ourselves to be a gathering place to talk about issues like this. And to be honest, really what better than AI as a future of medicine issue where the ethical issues are ripe, I should say rife and ripe for discussion. So I'm thrilled to be here to have this opportunity today. Go ahead. These are the lovely smiling faces of people at the center. Who says ethics has to be dour? See how happy we are? Okay, go ahead. So there are upcoming events coming up at the center on AI and ethics. If you scan that QR code or just go to our website, you can see all of them. In the interest of time, I won't pitch them here, but we have multiple ones coming up that touch on or focus on AI and ethics, a topic which, again, as we know in this workshop series, could not be more important or more present in front of us. Continue. Right, this is a picture of our events page. You can go to see our upcoming events. Next slide. Okay, and now with no further ado, no more computer problems and no more intro. I stole this slide from Sean, the evolution of AI from the jalopy to the flying car. We've moved from old-fashioned machine learning, something which in ethics we've been talking about over the years also, the ethical issues raised by that, and now the newfangled LLMs. New issues? I think so. Next slide. Return, please. So everything's changing so fast. How can we even discuss it? This is a lesson, I think, from both Dr. Simon and Dr. Granis's talk, that even a talk on, what was it, July 30th is now out of date. So how do you talk about the ethics of AI when everything changes so fast? Well, we'll try here, and it's only at one point in time, kind of like those lectures as well. Next slide. Here's my plan for you. I want to start, I'm trained as a philosopher before my ethics, and so I will bore you, take the time for 5 minutes of just some philosophical thoughts and opinions. So this is mostly for Sean to make him come out of his chair and get angry. And then I'll just quickly review 4 frameworks that you might use. And then I'm going to jump into 9 key recommendations, kind of the meat of the talk about AI and ethics, how to do AI ethically in research. And then we'll have some take-home messages and food for thought. Next slide. So here's my first philosophical question. Does ChatGPT understand what it's being asked to do? Next. So Sean said no. He's going to say I'm misquoting him, but I believe he's said this multiple times, and I think it's a very strong position. No, it's mimicking. It's not thinking. It's predicting the next word. Peter, don't you understand what it's doing? Next. There's actually a philosophical background for this position. John Searle famously proposed the Chinese room, where a person who does not know Chinese sits in a room. People come and they put a piece of paper with Chinese letters on it through one hole in the room. He looks at it. He goes to a book which tells him what to write, and he then puts the new paper out the other side of the room. And people say, wow, that person in that room speaks Chinese. He doesn't, right? He's just algorithmically producing responses. And John Searle offered that as an argument that nothing can be done syntactically the way an LLM is programmed, and it doesn't show understanding at all. Next, please. But there's another view that I'm a little more attracted to, which is that the LLM's ability to predict the next word in the way that it can, in the way that we're seeing now, does reflect understanding. It's a simple task, predicting the next word. It's simple in some sense, but the ability to do it in the complex situations and with the variety of responses we see does reflect understanding. There are those who argue in the computer science world that basically by teaching a computer to do this simple task, just predict the next word, we've given them understanding, because to do this simple task as well as it does, there must have been understanding. Next. Now, there is actually a philosophical background here, right? The first people who created computers said, how will we know when a computer is intelligent? Alan Turing famously said, I know, as soon as it can talk to you. As soon as you talk to it and it talks back in an open-ended human conversation, in a way that you don't know whether it's a human or a computer talking to you, that's it. There's nothing more to ask. Once it can do that, we're done. It has understanding. And again, I have some citations here at the bottom about, are LLMs doing it now? Maybe, maybe not, as Sean taught me, certainly soon. Next. Second philosophical questions, will AI make our lives better or worse? Large danger, it's worse. Next. Right, I think a lot about education. I think we all do in the university setting, right? LLMs can write passable papers for my students, so I can no longer assign papers because it's not education for a student to copy something off LLM. I just read a great quote from the New York Times saying, a history class where the student cuts and pastes his paper into the response is not a history class, it's a cut and paste class, which is why so many teachers like me are moving back to writing in class. That's the only way to avoid relying on a technique. It's not learning to think in a new way, it's learning to not think. Next. Again, these are my opinions. I can't prove them. If I proved them, we'd be here all day. Okay, workforce, of course, the worries here, replacing white-collar workers, robots, and other things with blue-collar workers, all kinds of complexity. Already we're seeing this with programmers, apparently, what I'm reading, right? So maybe there'll be other jobs worth doing. Apparently, feeding new prompts to AI will be the new job. But it's a worry. And as, again, Professor Hartsock said in her talk at the Center for Bioethics, what really matters is when you have an increase in efficiency, what do you do with that increased efficiency? If I can see twice as many patients in a half day because I have ambient listening and the AI is writing my notes, do I get the afternoon off? No, I see twice as many patients. Good for access, not necessarily better for my life. Go forward. Right, the energy and environment issues, I won't review those. Next. Right, so someday the AI will cure cancer, supposedly. Right now, just those earlier things that are happening sooner. That's a Jon Stewart point. I'll take it. Next. So can we stop AI and should we? Next. Can we? Probably not. So even if the US stopped, other countries would advance. It is individual choice. Again, I think what was so powerful, I think, in Dr. Granis's and Dr. Simon's talk so far is these tools are there. They are available. They are good. They are powerful and useful. So hard to stop it when that's the situation. It's kind of the invisible hand of capitalism, right? If people adopt it, that's what's going to happen. Next. Of course, you must admit that AI services are currently free because they're being subsidized by somebody who's trying to make money, and we'll see how that plays out. That's one way it could stop. But Peter Schwartz, the ethicist, is not going to stop it. Continue. Should we is kind of an interesting question. Next. Should we stop AI? So there's an old philosophical principle, ought implies can. that you can't be morally obligated to fly to the moon if you don't know how to fly. Like, it can't be like your moral obligation to do things which you can't do. So the first question might settle the second question. If we can't stop AI, maybe there's no moral obligation to try. Next. But there's a long history of bioethicists looking forward, looking at the present and the near future and saying, hold it, change things, and not necessarily having much of an impact. So let's just be aware of that too, as this ethicist speaks to you today. Next, please. Cassandra is a famous Greek figure who saw the future and told people it and was cursed by never being believed. That was her lot, was to see the future, know the horrible things coming, and not to be believed. Okay, next 4 frameworks. Go, please. Thank you, Medina. Again, you're doing a great job. Belmont Report. I won't even read these to you. You should know these 4 principles. This is the knee jerk. This is great. They're amazing principles. Right? Separation of treatment and research, respect for persons, beneficence, try to do the best you can to improve science without hurting anybody, justice, make sure things are fair. Next. That's the shortest time any ethicist has ever spent on the 4 principles in the history of the world. I want you to know that. Okay, just this is the longer list of topics we cover in our responsible conduct of research courses. Maybe some of you have taken them. This is actually an NIH-generated list. I think all of these topics are relevant to AI. I won't be able to touch on all of them, but many. Next. This is my favorite bioethicist, Dr. Kozali Simon, who gave us 5 cross-cutting recommendations, cross-cutting tips in her talk. And I looked at it and I bolded immediately the 4 out of the 5, which are ethics, right? 1 about using good prompts, that's science maybe. Verify your outputs, right? If you're going to have outputs, you better verify them, not just put them in your paper. That's ethical, right? That's kind of the beneficence thing. Make sure you're advancing science, not just doing dumb stuff. Avoid unintentional plagiarism. We'll get back to that one. It's a great piece of recommendation. Take responsibility for what you claim is your product, however you generate it, and we'll talk more about that. And acknowledge AI assistance. These are great principles. I want to acknowledge that she got there before I did today, but I'll build on them a little bit. Next. Okay, so then I did some searching. Maybe AI helped me. And I came across a paper from this year from Dave Resnick, who's a really good bioethicist at NIH. Kind of a strange journal, but a good paper. And it has, next please. It had a table of recommendations. You can't read them, they're too small. Don't worry, I've picked the good ones. I've count them as 9. I'm gonna go through them and go forward, please. And one thing I'm going to do is for each one, I'm going to tell you the recommendation. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. And I'm going to think about complexities and questions around it. That's my job, right? The recommendation's simple, but the discussion of it and considering it as a recommendation and what it's actually teaching us, I'm going to try to help us do. Finally, there may be some related issues I go into, and then I'll conclude. Next. The first one you've heard about, confidentiality, it's kind of an old one. AI systems should not be used when they are likely to involve unauthorized disclosure of confidential information, such as those related to human research subjects, unpublished research, intellectual property, or proprietary research. Next. Right? So we heard about these dangers from Dr. Granis and from Dr. Simon. In both cases, you should be careful and make sure the protections are in place. That's a good recommendation. Next. So it's sort of a technical issue, not very interesting to a bioethicist, but very important. And in some ways, I'd say it's an awareness and responsibility issue, right? That it's technical how you do it. You probably have to have somebody help you. I have Dr. Granis helping me whenever I run into this, but you have to be aware of it. And so part of bioethics is always awareness. Think about confidentiality, try to address it. Next. There is sort of a complexity here about how much safety is necessary. As an ethicist, I do think about this, and actually Dr. Granis has heard me talk about this, and Dr. Grau too, about how to move forward with AI. I've got a project involving giving LLMs to patients to have them learn about their conditions. And there's been a lot of like, well, can you do that? PHI, what if they went on and disclosed some PHI, even though it's something very benign about them? Boy, what do we do about that? Like, how do you balance, again, here's a great classic bioethics question. How do you balance the goal of advancing science and improving healthcare with the danger somebody's PHI is going to get out there? There's a law. I'm obviously never going to break the law or break the policies at IU, but it's also an ethics question how to balance the two. Hopefully policy will help us find that. Next. Okay, number 2. That was quick. That's 1. We'll get 10. Still 10 minutes for questions and answers. So Researchers should disclose, describe, and explain their use of AI in research, including its limitations, in language that can be understood by non-experts. And don't name those authors, but do disclose their activity. Okay, next, please. So this is actually one of the Dr. Simon principles, acknowledge AI assistance. Next. Right, it fits with the model, right? This makes sense. We acknowledge in research. We thank those who helped us. We disclose things. We disclose who supported us. We disclose our private support. Next. Right? And it makes sense that if, by the way, one of these principles is you don't say AI is an author. We'll get back to that. If it's not an author, you should recognize it in some other way. Next. Time for complexities. Complexities are first, and I'm truly puzzled by this. I started realizing more and more this week how puzzled I am. What exactly is the nature of the contribution by AI that makes it necessary to disclose its role? Right? We don't disclose all our tools. We don't disclose our pen. I didn't say that I wrote this, set with a paper mate highlight pen. But we don't disclose that I wrote it on MS Word. There's all kinds of things that help us that I don't disclose. So AI's contribution is different if people think we should disclose it. It's something like it's creative, innovative, more like a human's. That's why we have to treat it like a human who's not an author and acknowledge it. That's an interesting position. Next. Right, Dr. Granis, I'm going to say in his talk, I thought was really wonderful at suggesting that maybe we should get over this idea that it's something special we have to disclose. I'm not sure he meant to say this, but that's how I took it. I thought it was really interesting. He said, Newsweek says, use AI however you want. You don't have to say anything about it, but you're responsible. Right? AI is not the author, you are, so you're the responsible party. So disclosure is not the game. It's responsibility for the product, which is the responsibility. So forget this whole disclosure thing. Next. I'm exaggerating, Dr. Okay. Oh, also, responsibility being the focus. Bill's not here. I'm sorry. Dr. Tierney made a great comment after Sean's talk where he said, well, okay, Dr. Granis, you think we should just take responsibility, but that doesn't work so well, right? Look what happened when we made EHRs, electronic health records, able to copy and paste previous notes. And we said, be responsible, though. If you copy and paste, make sure it's right. Nobody made sure it was right. Right, the notes became unreadable. Sean pointed out, well, we fixed that electronic problem with an electronic solution, which it stops you when you try to copy and paste. But maybe we do that at AI. Next. Right, the point, though, of this exchange is that really the power of responsibility is bigger than the power of disclosure. Right, if you are responsible for making sure your output is good, that was a Simon criteria. That's actually more important, more important, right, than disclosure. Just saying, oh, I used AI is not going to get you much without the responsibility to make sure that AI contribution was worthwhile and that the research was good. So actually, I think this discussion helps downplay sort of, and maybe even question, what is disclosure for exactly? It's an easy one to point at. We say, oh yeah, we should disclose, it's easy. But what about disclosure? Next. And actually, disclosure as an issue has been a very interesting issue for bioethicists for a long time. And so maybe I can make a contribution here to think about AI, given our feeling that we should be disclosing AI. So disclosure is standard and required in research ethics for example, if you get industry funding. Next. And what does it accomplish, some ethicists have asked? Well, that's interesting. What is the point of disclosing your funding from Lilly and you publish a paper? Well, readers should be skeptical of your paper because they know you got the money from Lilly. Well, we want readers to be skeptical no matter what. Like, what exactly are we recommending? Like, oh, this paper you should probably check and see how it is. Whereas the other paper in New England Journal you're not checking? Like, what exactly is this telling you? Next, are we recommending something worse, like cynicism? Okay. Second, psychologists will tell you that disclosure is not always a lovely solvent of ethics, right? It's not like it always makes things better. In fact, when you, as a physician, maybe as a researcher too, you say, well, I was funded by this company, which is supposed to teach them something like, be careful of me, watch out for me, I have this second interest. In fact, it has the opposite effect, right? If a patient says, oh, Peter Schwartz, funded by Lilly, he must be an expert in Ozempic. not epic, terzepatide, right? And he must really know what he's doing. And boy, he also trusts me and told me that. I'll do whatever he says, right? The reverse effect of disclosure. It's meant to be a warning, but it can be a licenser. In fact, this idea of moral licensing, once I've told my patients that I'm funded by Lilly, I just go ahead and do whatever I want. I told them they should expect whatever I do. Next. So also, once everybody has disclosures, what do you do with all these disclosures? Again, I just want to put some mud in the water about the very easy but important principle of disclosing. I think as an ethicist, maybe that's a contribution. Next. Okay, responsibility. Now, AI systems should not be named as authors, inventors, or copyright holders. We kind of quoted that earlier, but it's an interesting point. Next, it has to do with this issue of responsibility, right? That the reason it can't be the author, even if it wrote the words for you, the way apparently all of the emails I get from Sean are written by him. The reason it's not the author, but Sean is, because it cannot take responsibility for the accuracy, integrity, and originality of the work. Back to responsibility, right? AI will do the work, but the human has to be responsible. LLMs are not moral actors, so they cannot take moral responsibility, so they can't be the author. Next. Well, as usual, I'm going to raise a complexity. This idea of taking responsibility, standing and saying this paper is something I stand by as a moral actor, I think gets a little muddy in our current world. I think we have to acknowledge that, right? So can my statistician really take responsibility that I covered all the important previous research in my discussion? She can't. I mean, she doesn't know the literature the way I do. Can I take responsibility for her statistical analysis? Well, no. We have a community between us. We have a history of working together. I ask her questions. I have a sense of her expertise. She asks me questions. She has a sense. We have a community together. Next. And so there is sort of a sense of a shared responsibility among the authors. And I don't know, given this, again, very simple answer from my AI ethics paper that says they can never be authors, I don't know if it's quite so clear that this community of understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses, looking over each other's shoulders a little bit without doing each other's work, I don't know if that can't apply to AI. I just don't know. And so I wanted to raise that question for you in my complexity and question part of this recommendation. Next. I do think, again, this idea that they're not authors, but they must be acknowledged is this weird spot to put AI, right? It's almost like a human, but not enough like a human to be an author. That's an interesting position. It's kind of, I think it's an unstable spot. I don't think it's going to last. In fact, go next. Is this the one? Oh, no. I've got one about the AI scientist. Sean knows what that is, but nobody else does in this room. Okay, so avoid unintentional plagiarisms. Of course, this is the other problem with LLMs, right? They're trained on text. So when they give you their advice and you disclose it, you're not going to call them an author, but you disclose it, you're basically getting somebody else's idea without really knowing it because it's been processed and presented to you. So this is a danger. Again, even with disclosure, basically the danger you're laundering plagiarism. There you go. I feel like, thanks, Peter. Thanks for another worry. Go ahead. Right, so you have to have responsibility. This idea of responsibility will be also making sure you're not just picking up ideas that have been skimmed from somebody else's paper. How will you fulfill that responsibility? Maybe there'll need to be an AI tool. Okay, next. Yeah, so this is the AI scientist. Do you know what this is? I'm about to ruin your day. Okay, here you go. The AI scientist is a fully automated research in computer science. Just so you know how far it's gone. Maybe you guys know about this. It's an LLM, and it generates the ideas, writes and runs the code, and then writes up the results as a research paper, although it does disclose that it is AI generated. And so they looked at these papers and they decided that, well, basically it's just plagiarizing, right? It's like skimming other people's papers, processing them, and then publishing its own paper on the same topic. So that's not good. Yeah, next. So this is interesting. The accusation was not that it copied the words. Now, plagiarism, you might know, when we think about it as ethically and regulatory-wise, is about copying words, not usually ideas, right? You copy down the words from somebody's paper and you use them as your own. This is about copying ideas. Next. And the team behind the AI scientists, said, no, look, these were not the words, and this was a different use of the ideas. It was a building on the idea. It wasn't just using the same idea. An independent expert looked at it and said, no, it's not plagiarism. It's a lot of methodological overlap. So again, this is a gray area. If you want to avoid plagiarism, be responsible about it. Again, it's more of a consciousness raising issue than an easy rule. Next. This is a challenge for human authors as well, right? We get lots of ideas, lots of places. We don't always know where we got our idea. Did we read a paper that said that? Interesting question. And of course, things are coming so fast and furious in the modern world of research. We all know how hard it is to keep straight all of that. The idea is whether you've just copied the crux of somebody else's work rather than just learning from it. Very hard line, another complexity to think about. Next. Right, easier with word for word copying, but even then there's tons of gray area. Did they change enough words? Did they change the structure of the sentence? Where does plagiarism stop and responsible learning begin? Next. Disclosure again, disclosure to patients seems reasonable that we should tell our patients about the AI being used in the study. I learned again in the first 2 workshops about informed consent documents or protocols written by LLMs. Maybe we should be telling the patients that this LLM has produced these products. Next. And in fact, when we're implementing something AI built, like a prediction rule or some way of treating patients, maybe that should be disclosed as well. The role of AI in the research project, it's a reasonable thing given this interest in disclosure to disclose that. Next. The question again has to do with the point of disclosure, right? What are you trying to tell somebody when you do this disclosure? Are you saying, go ahead, next. Are you saying that you shouldn't trust the informed consent or the protocol? Again, back to responsibility, that if AI, and I think this is actually echoing what I think Dr. Kozoli, Dr. Simon said, and Dr. Granis, that responsibility for the product is essential. Next. In addition, even with black boxes, where the AI is generating recommendations, we're not quite sure how. Some argue that therefore we must attain some form of explainability there. Others would say, no, we should assess the rule very carefully as we're applying it and studying it. Maybe that's enough rather than trying to back engineer an understanding of what the AI is doing. Next. I'm almost done with the recommendations. Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Do we always know what's research? A great paper in American Journal of Bioethics last year was about what do you do? Go ahead, next, please. What do you do with a heart monitor that's continually learning? Right. The essence of AI is that it's continually learning. And so if a heart monitor is continually learning and maybe checking its performance against something, is that now research? Should we be consenting, disclosing to those patients that they're involved in a research study, or are we just improving our heart monitors? It's a really good question. No easy answer there. Should we give people the chance to opt out? I want a dumb heart monitor that's not learning because I'm afraid this one may go off the rails. Again, responsibility, make sure you're not hurting people. Next. Impacted communities, it's actually my last of the recommendations. We should engage with impacted communities. Next. This is, again, a general principle of engaging with our participants and trying to include them in the planning and the conduct of our research. We're not alone in our work and research. We're working with communities that have needs and interests. Next. We're currently doing a project, my team is, with a larger project, which is creating a new AI-generated tool to predict chronic kidney disease progression. And next. And so we're meeting with chronic kidney disease patients in these advisory boards over the next year to hear what they think of using their data for this and what they would think of using this tool, this AI tool, potentially a black box, to guide their care. So we're going to work on that. Next. Right, but then again, with every recommendation, I can't help myself. Please forgive me. I have to raise the complexity in the question, which is how do we help them help us? How do we educate them in a way that they can actually guide us in a meaningful and useful way? So we have done public deliberations, my team has. A public deliberation is 2 weekends. There's a year of planning. The participants get a booklet. They get a day of lectures before we ask them what they think because they've been brought up to speed. Now, you might say, oh, Peter, you're just brainwashing them to agree with you. We try very hard to avoid that. but we also try very hard to educate them. Our community advisory boards with these CKD patients we do not have that kind of funding, and we don't have that kind of time. So they will be coming in a bit raw. Now that's good. They'll be pure. They'll be raw, but also it's bad. Next. Right. So what do we do when their recommendation seems to reflect confusion, say a lack of understanding of numbers in numeracy? What if it's actually a bias? What if they are coming in and they don't like people with mental illness, and so they're going to say we shouldn't be doing certain things? Fascinating problems. Again, it's the other side of the coin of including our communities. We will do it, but we must consider the dangers and the challenges. Next. Bias. Oh, right. So some would say I should have started with this one. Right. So we've always worried about AI picking up from old data bias that was in the system and then generating new rules that basically build on that bias. Many of you may have heard stories and heard cases of this, such as where race predicted medical use when that was basically reflecting a bias in the way healthcare was being presented, or perhaps an inequality in society. Next. Right. Being at Regan Street, we all know about an algorithm of we may not be able to say it, but we know about it. Algorithm of vigilance. I don't think I said it right. Next. Right. And it is always, though, difficult to distinguish what is a useful use of race or gender or class in a prediction rule, what is not bias and what is. That is not easy. And whose responsibility is it to know? I think probably I'm suggesting something that probably is in place, which I assume if I had this worry about something I was doing, I'd have a technical person who would help me figure it out. Seems like a consultation situation, but maybe they're already in place. Next. Random errors. Oh boy, I'm watching the time here. I'll be done in 4 minutes. We'll have 10 minutes for discussion. Researchers are responsible not just for identifying bias, but also random errors. Next. Right? We resist the idea. This is, I think, a deeper issue, right? We must resist with our teams the idea that AI must be more objective than human reasoning. That in some sense, because it's a machine, because it's not a wetware, it's a dryware, that somehow it's better and it must be better. Next. Right? Well, right, I learned from Dr. Granis about temperature setting, that if I want it to be reproducible, I can set that. But of course, that's not about creating accuracy. It's about creating reproducibility that can be measured then for its accuracy. Next. So if an AI reviews a focus group transcript and identifies certain themes, is there something better about its job? It did it, in 15 seconds, and it did it using this technical tool. It was not a human who might have been drinking coffee or not. It was very technical, but as usual, we have no reason to think that coding is better than a human's, and we should be very careful about jumping to that conclusion. I have a citation here from a paper that tried to look at that and found that the AIs were pretty bad, actually, according to their judgments. Next. In all these areas, I think we've seen that human oversight was essential, and therefore this is I think the last recommendation I'll talk about, which is that researchers should use AI only in situations where they have sufficient expertise or judgment to use it responsibly. Again, as we've seen in every area of AI use, that there was a human oversight part that was probably pretty important. Next. Down to the take-home messages. Next. So researchers are going to use, so here are some take-home messages I maybe gleaned from the first talks. The researchers are going to use LLMs and other forms of novel AI in their research in myriad ways, many that we don't even know yet. And there are, of course, really important ethical concerns, but also approaches and reflection that can go into doing this ethically. Next. Right, disclosure, I guess I've probably hammered on this a little hard. Disclosure is not going to be a solution, although it may be part of how we go forward. Next. Certainly, continued human oversight and responsibility is going to be part of the way forward. Next. This raises two questions. First, as we saw in some of the cases, can we expect humans to live up to that responsibility? I saw one very sharp head shake out there. And secondly, as AI evolves further, can we hope that humans will continue to be able to exert this oversight? Next, my last slide. Right, Tom Friedman in the New York Times this month, quoting a friend named Craig Mundy, who wrote Genesis about AI with some co-authors, that we'll soon find we have not merely birthed a new tool, right? New tools, old rules, not a new tool, but a new species, the superintelligent machine. It will not just follow instructions, it'll learn, adapt, and evolve on its own, far beyond the bounds of human comprehension. At that point, how can humans provide that essential oversight and responsibility? Next. I will say then, of course, that the challenges then go beyond research ethics. And I don't have enough pictures in my talks, but who can turn down the Terminator? And that is it. So I think we do have time for discussion. Thanks. Who is somebody monitoring the online? Does somebody monitor the online? Okay, great. But I'll let Dr. Granis, but since I picked on Dr. Granis so much during the talk, I feel like he should have the first shot at me. Right. If you create an echo disaster, I'll blame you now because I did it before.
It would be my fault. Yeah. So I wanted to kind of go back to one of the points you made, which is around, disclosure to patients around protocols or other documents. And I'm wondering, how is that any different than if I take a protocol that I used at a project 5 years ago, and then I make a few tweaks to it for a new project, or if I go to my colleague and say, hey, I'm doing a qualitative study and you're a qualitative, expert, can I start with one of your protocols and make some changes to it and get your input on it? How is the LLM any different than that?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you on this one. I think it's, again, very tempting at multiple stages to say AI is new and different. And so what can we do? One choice would be it's new and different, it's worrisome, we won't use it. That's not attractive. Another choice is, well, let's just tell people so that they know. It's almost like, it's a way of moving forward where you feel good. And you should feel good, right? So you might say, once you've disclosed, you now have done the best you can. You've told them. You can't answer Peter's questions on what are they supposed to do with that information, but you're not hiding anything. And so disclosure has sort of a moral, paint to it that's useful. But you're right. I don't think I'm very inspired that somehow an AI writing my protocol means I have to tell my patients about it. I'm not even really sure what I would tell them. Like, do you understand there's something called a protocol? Like, we're following some rules and somebody has to write them, and we kind of gave it the idea, but the AI gave us the rules. I think a patient would look at me instead of shrug and say, like, what am I supposed to do with that disclosure? So when we get to the disclosure area, which is such an important part of ethics always, I think it's important to also be critical about what it's for and why we're doing it, just like you asked.
Okay. First is, please share citation regarding AI doing a poor job identifying themes and data from focus group.
Yeah, it's on my slide, and we'll share the slides. I promise. It's not a great paper either. I got to warn you. It's recent, and they did some work, so I'm happy to share it. Of course, it's the first author is Han. I can pull up the slide if I'm not afraid I'm going to break something, so I'm not pulling up my slide.
Disclosure of text generation seems a waste unless that text is impacting decisions or courses of action. Otherwise, isn't it just more?
Yeah, more what? Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I get the gist without even finishing it. Yeah, no, I think, again, this is interesting. We're all beating up on disclosure a little bit, and I kind of wanted to stimulate that. The new tool that we can generate text without writing it ourselves, is fascinating and really life-changing in many ways. It really changes our view of the world that there's a tool that can do this. I still am a bit gobsmacked over it. And so we're eager to say something like, well, let's tell people where that words came from. But we have to recognize that by doing that and focusing on the disclosure of it, there is an abdication of responsibility we probably don't want to endorse, right? That we want to say, well, And again, I think I'm echoing a little bit the stance that Dr. Simon and Dr. Granis took in the first two talks of if you use the tools responsibly in all these ways that I tried to lay out and that they laid out, then that's probably what your obligation is. Disclosure may be part of it too, but really the main thing is the responsible use.
On one of your slides, you said, you sort of pushed back on the idea that AI is producing, you rejected the idea of AI producing objective content. Can you say a little bit more about that? And then I've got a follow-up question.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, no, so I'm using the word objective a little loosely. I don't think I give you a definition of it, and you're right to ask. So there is a sense that when we put AI on a task, like analyzing, let's say, a focus group transcript, take an easy one, there's something sort of hard and real and scientific about the analysis because it's done by a machine. And if we set the temperature to 0, I think it's 0, then it'll do it the same way the next time too. And a human cannot be treated that way. They will do it differently each time. The problem is that that sense of objectivity, maybe the simplest notion being reproducibility and lack of human input, does not match usefulness or scientific meaning. And I think it's really important to keep going back to that and making sure we're not fooling ourselves or our patients or the consumers of our research with that mistake. Is that dodging the question or answering it?
No, I think that clarification is helpful. Objective in my sense from a philosophical perspective is sort of the objective with a capital O piece. And I would agree then. I mean, it almost seemed a little bit odd to say AI is being objective in what sense might they be? So I didn't disagree with it. I just thought it was kind of an interesting.
Well, for everybody, not Sean, because he has this philosophical background as well. I accuse you. So objective also means sort of as a contrary to subjective. So if subjective is of the subject, it's a human perspective. Objective would be, I don't know, of the world, right? The subjective objective distinction. And so again, I think you can state the concern there too, right? That somehow the AI doing the work is creating something which is of the world and independent and independent of human thought. Now, of course, these AIs are trained on human thought. Mm-hmm. So even there, you would have to question whether there's a sense of objectivity that really applies.
Yeah, I would say, and this is everybody's gonna go to sleep now. I think AI is epistemic, not ontologic, right? It knows what it knows, but it doesn't know whether what it knows is actually underlying it, and that's I think that grounds probably some of the greatest concerns about AI is right now its inability to actually go beyond what the humans give it, right? I mean, they're dependent on what we give it right now. When they get to be more ontological, more being able to see the way the world reality really is, or how what we tell it is different from, what it might be able to observe otherwise, that's when I think things are going to get scary.
Oh, you're not scared yet, Sean? Yeah, no, so I agree. I'm not sure. Let's not try to define epistemologic versus ontologic, but I hear what you're saying. But I will grab again in my philosophical mindset. Please forgive us both for doing this. But the idea they just have what we give them. I don't know what to say about that statement, right? We all just have what's been given us. Mm-hmm. Right. I only have the input that's come into my ears and my eyes and my senses in my years of life. And so do I not go beyond it? Well, in some sense I do, in some sense I don't. And I don't know, we can look at the kind of, technological, as far as I understand it, which is limited, the technological procedures going on inside an LLM and say, oh, well, this is clearly not going beyond what it was fed. I think that a new piece of output, which has never been seen by the world before, which is outputted by ChatGPT, in some sense that has gone beyond what was given to it because those words were not given to it. So you would have to, as a philosopher, if you wanted to really grapple with this, think about what it means to go beyond the inputs. Yeah.
I'm going to resist going further
We'll,
down.
we'll
that.
have coffee and beer together.
Any other questions? I do have another.
Oh, I think
We have one comment. We are putting a lot of responsibility on researchers to use these tools responsibly. Responsible use may look different across domains and contexts. I'm interested in your thoughts about how institutions can support and provide guidance without getting in the way.
Oh my gosh. Okay, who was that? Can you say the name? Are they saying the name?
Heather Coate?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I know Heather. So that's a great question. And it gets to a deeper theme in research ethics and regulation. I have a friend, a philosopher I like, an ethicist I like, who basically has always said, it's kind of funny we have IRBs. You know, if you look at an IRB, you look at all the requirements and the oversight, you'd say researchers must be the worst people in the world, right? We have to look over their shoulders. We have to check them. Why not trust them? Like, what happened to trust? And so I like what Heather said, that, you know, what are you doing, Peter? You're putting all this responsibility on researchers. What does that look like? How do you support it? I don't really know. I've always been an educator rather than a regulator. I have good friends who are regulators. I know we have to do it. I actually really am an enormous fan of the IRB. I think they've made the balance very well at oversight without getting in the way. I think they've done an outstanding job. I think they are very unusual in their ability to walk that line. And I think going forward with AI, it'll be a similar challenge the IRB always faces of protection and a system for oversight without limiting. And I do believe, though, that education and reflection, we have to trust our researchers. I mean, not trust them blindly, but we have to call on them to live up to these responsibilities, potentially through the kind of education that we do and the reflection. And these talks, this talk should be watched by every researcher because it will change their lives. No, but that's my answer. It's a wonderful question. It makes me shiver.
We're at time. If I knew what the next talk was going to be, I'd announce it, but I don't. So,
It's on AI and qualitative research.
oh, thank you.
I think
Yes.
it's the next one.
Yep,
Okay,
that's fine.
awesome. Great. Thank you. Take care, everybody.